Stop wasting money on amenities that don't improve your ratings. The harsh truth is that most hosts invest in the wrong upgrades because they think like homeowners, not like guests. Your beautiful new backsplash might look great, but if it doesn't solve a guest problem or create a memorable moment, it won't impact your reviews. After reviewing hundreds of guest comments, I found a clear pattern in what actually gets mentioned in reviews versus what hosts think matters. By the end of this video, you'll have a 3-tier blueprint so you never waste money on unimpactful amenities again. Let me show you what I've discovered about the differences between what looks good and what actually works. Most hosts make the same expensive mistake. They buy what looks good instead of what guests actually use and remember. This happens because we think like homeowners when we should think like guests. When you're setting up your own home, you want it to reflect your personality, but guests have completely different priorities. They need to charge their phones, get good Wi-Fi for work calls, and sleep comfortable after a long day. Analysis of dozens of reviews shows guests rarely comment on purely aesthetic upgrades. I know hosts who spent thousands on custom light fixtures and original artwork from local artists, and these pieces looked amazing, but I've never seen a guest mention lighting in a review unless it was broken or too dim to use. 0 mentions in guest reviews over 2 years of hosting for that expensive artwork. Designer furniture is another money trap. I've seen hosts buy expensive dining sets thinking guests will appreciate the quality. Most guests eat takeout at the table or work on their laptops. They care more about having enough outlets nearby than the wood grain on the table. Same thing with fancy couches. Guests want comfort and cleanliness, not necessarily brand names. Guests care more about function than form when writing reviews. They mention things that either frustrated them or impressed them during their stay. A broken coffee maker gets mentioned. A phone charger by the window gets mentioned. Your expensive throw pillows don't get mentioned unless they're uncomfortable. Actually, I learned this with pillows in my own properties. We went a little above the norm for pillows and mattresses. Not expensive stuff, but we didn't buy the cheap stuff either. And what we found was that people were really enjoying these. We got messages from guests asking what kind of pillows we used because they slept so well. They wanted the actual product so that they could go buy it. Why do hosts fall into this trap? We get emotionally attached to making our space beautiful instead of useful. When you put your heart into decorating a place, it feels personal, and you want guests to appreciate your effort and your style. But guests aren't there to validate your decorating choices. They're there to have a good stay and accomplish whatever brought them to your city. When I prioritized function over form in my second property, my ratings improved significantly. I started paying attention to what guests actually mentioned in my reviews. Patterns emerged quickly. They talked about sleeping well, having everything that they needed, and easy check-in processes. They mentioned practical things like parking, kitchen supplies, and bathroom amenities. They appreciated thoughtful touches that made their stay easier, not necessarily prettier. Think about the last hotel that you stayed at. What did you remember? It was probably the quality of the bed, the shower pressure, or whether the Wi-Fi worked well. Maybe you remembered excellent customer service or a great breakfast. You probably didn't remember the lobby artwork or the style of furniture. The clear pattern in what guests actually talk about comes down to 2 categories. First, basic needs that have to work properly. Sleeping, showering, and connectivity, and safety. And then second, unexpected conveniences that solve travel problems, like having a phone charger or good coffee or extra towels available. The biggest mistakes are aesthetic upgrades that don't really solve guest problems. That expensive backsplash looks great in your listing photos, but it won't improve your rating. The custom paint job might match your vision perfectly, but guests won't mention it unless the walls are dirty or damaged. What actually works is completely different from what most hosts expect. You need a way to predict which amenities will actually impact your reviews before you spend the money. I've created a 3-tier framework based on guest behavior patterns and review analysis. This system separates amenities by their actual impact on ratings and not their cost or how nice they look. Each tier serves a different purpose in your guest experience, and understanding these differences will save you thousands of dollars. Before buying anything, use the guest problem test. Ask yourself 2 questions. Does this solve a problem guests have during their stay? And will guests notice this enough to mention it in a review? If you can't answer yes to both, don't buy it. Data from guest review analysis shows that low-cost items often yield outsized review mentions compared to expensive furniture pieces. Tier 1 contains core drivers, essential baseline amenities that prevent negative reviews but don't create positive ones. These are non-negotiables that guests expect to work properly. When these items fail, you get bad reviews. When they work perfectly, guests don't mention them at all. Think of these as your foundation. Reliable Wi-Fi is the perfect Tier 1 example. Guests need to stay connected, especially those working remotely or traveling for business. When your internet works perfectly, guests don't mention it. When it's slow or unreliable, you get negative reviews every time. When the Wi-Fi goes down, you're definitely going to hear about it from a guest. Quality mattresses and pillows also fall into Tier 1. Guests expect to sleep well, and a comfortable bed prevents complaints about uncomfortable stays. I went a little above the norm for pillows and mattresses in my properties, and we got some nice things for the money, but not expensive stuff. And what we found out was that people were really enjoying these. Guests would message us and ask what kind of pillows or mattresses they were because they wanted to buy them for their own homes. Tier 2 includes niche winners, high-impact, low-cost upgrades that guests notice and mention in reviews. These items solve common travel problems and create positive experiences without breaking your budget. This tier gives you the best return on investment because guests actively appreciate these additions. Charging stations are a perfect Tier 2 upgrade. I added bedside charging stations with USB ports and regular outlets in all my properties. Guests mention these constantly because they solve the universal problem of keeping devices charged. The cost was under $50 per room, but guests talk about this in reviews. Coffee stations also fall into Tier 2. I provide a quality coffee maker with good coffee, filters, and basic supplies, and this small addition makes a big difference for guests who enjoy starting their day with coffee. And the total cost is usually under $50, but guests mention coffee in about 40% of positive reviews according to user surveys. Tier 3 contains memorable touches that create exceptional experiences and guarantee mentions. Now, these amenities go beyond solving basic problems to create wow moments that guests remember and they share them. While more expensive, these upgrades justify higher nightly rates and attract more bookings. A well-stocked pantry with basic cooking supplies exemplifies Tier 3. Guests choosing rentals over hotels often want to cook their own meals. Providing essentials like salt, pepper, oil, and coffee gives them all that home-like experience that they're seeking. Outdoor seating areas with comfortable furniture creates another memorable touch that guests appreciate and mention. Use the guest problem test to evaluate any potential upgrade. Items that solve real guest problems and get mentioned frequently in positive reviews are worth the investment. Items that never get mentioned, no matter how nice they look, probably aren't worth your money. The key is to understand where to invest your budget for maximum impact. Now you have a clear system to guide every amenity decision. Remember the three tiers. Core drivers prevent negative reviews. Niche winners create positive mentions at low cost, and memorable touches justify premium pricing. The difference between successful and struggling hosts isn't about the money that they spend, but how strategically they spend it. So take a hard look at your current amenities using this framework. Walk through your space like a guest would. Ask yourself what problems each item solves. If something doesn't pass the guest problem test, consider removing it or replacing it with something more useful. Audit one room right now and swap one low impact piece for an item from Tier 2 to see immediate review gains. Smart spending, not big budgets, is the key to 5-star reviews.